let's get into it. Some of these odds for the Pac-12 here on the Daily Tip. Because everybody's loving USC this season, they are the favorites to win the Pac-12. They are plus 200 to win the division over a BetMGM, followed by Utah plus 250 and Oregon plus 300. Some of these odds are a little different where Oregon and Utah are switched. Some books have Utah being the third favorite to win it as opposed to Oregon. But bottom line, everybody's in on USC. And here's a strange thing, because we saw the results of Pac-12 Media Day, and the results were a little different with the other coaches and media members or whatever that vote in this Media Day poll saying Utah was the best team and they won the Pac-12 last season. And so it was Utah first, Oregon second, and USC got the third most votes at this Media Day. So when you see this big of a discrepancy between the media who covers this conference on a daily basis and the odds, Jenks, what does that say to you?
Well, it tells me that I just think USC is getting a lot of public money right now just because it's a sexy team to put money on, and they have big names. When you think of Lincoln Riley, when you think of Caleb Williams, they got Jordan Addison from Pitt. There's a lot of reasons to like USC from a big name perspective, but we're talking about a team that won 4 games last year. So that's the one thing that you have to keep in mind is that we rarely think about this, Chelsa. Look, when people say to me, can you believe Lincoln Riley left Norman, Oklahoma for Los Angeles? I'm like, yeah, I absolutely can. He was in Norman, Oklahoma. However, from a college football perspective, we rarely see, and I don't like Oklahoma, I'm a Texas guy, but we rarely see a coach leave a program like Oklahoma with all of its storied history, even for a place like USC. That's pretty unheard of in college football. It's changing now because of the money involved. But when you have one of the best offensive minds in the game go to USC and he takes his quarterback with him, a quarterback who had a ton of success in the second half of the season, and then you add a receiver like Jordan Addison, all of a sudden there's a lot of excitement behind the possibility, behind the potential. But I think a lot of this is LA sexy money on the Trojans as opposed to looking at the teams that are in the Pac-12. And is any team in the Pac-12 less sexy than Utah? But I think the best team, the best coach team. And they were within 3 points of Ohio State in the Rose Bowl last year. They have their starting quarterback coming back. They have a great defense. There's a lot to like about Utah. So I think what we're seeing with USC is just a public favorite that's getting some money.
Also, people love to look at offenses. And college football, most of the time, is an offensive game. You need a good quarterback. You need a prolific offense. But looking at USC's defense last year, and it's a defense that only returns 3 starters, which maybe is a good thing for a team that gave up 409 yards per game. So for USC, they're going to have to score a ton because they're giving up a ton of points. I'm not sure if Lincoln Riley can come in 1 year and really shore up that defense. So yes, Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley are already, familiar with each other. He can bring in his quarterback and they're going to run the same thing that they ran at Oklahoma. No problems, that you would see, especially for Caleb Williams, who was a big time recruit and certainly has a ton of talent. But looking at Utah, I think it is the safer play here, looking at the returning Pac-12 champion and also the best defense in the Pac-12, allowing just 317 yards per game. So I think from a value standpoint, don't go with the favorite here, especially because all the media members don't even think USC is the second best team in that conference. So I will go Utah plus 250 to win the Pac-12 just because I think the value's there. Their quarterback and their running back both return. And also, it's the best defense in the Pac-12. So I think for a value for a team that's not even favored to win the division, it's got to be Utah.
I don't disagree. They're going to be great this year. They really are. And Utah is never a public team. They're always kind of under the radar. And remember, this is also something else to keep in mind if you're looking ahead in futures and how the Pac-12 may shake out. They don't choose the top team from each division anymore. So they take the 2 teams with the highest winning percentages that make the title game. And also something else I'm looking at, Chelsea, at BetMGM, you can get over 9 wins for Utah at a touch of plus money, plus 105. Ooh, I like that a lot because Utah, I do believe, is the best team in the conference. And just because they're not getting that money does not sway me at all. Big believer in the Utes this season. And if you can get through, this is a very top heavy conference. If you can get through your schedule with those top two or three teams, you can really make some noise. And I think the Utes will do that.
Yeah, according to the books, this is basically a three-team race with USC, Oregon, and Utah. Next on the odds would be UCLA 10-1. I'm not sure if they're going to make a run here. I do believe that it's going to be one of those three teams. So let's take a look at Oregon for a second. They got 2 votes in the Pac-12 Media Day edition of who they think is going to win the Pac-12. They're plus 300 to win the division, third best odds over at BetMGM. I think this is an interesting team, especially when you bring in a veteran quarterback who has a very high ceiling. Bo Nix comes over from Auburn, which, if you watch those Auburn games, you probably have a love-hate relationship with Bo Nix, because as good as he is, and sometimes he makes these wild plays with his feet and he scrambles around and gets it down the field, but also we've seen him in goal line situations where there are wide open receivers. And Auburn had some of the best talent at receiver when Bo Nix was at Auburn. So it's not like he didn't
Yeah.
have weapons. He would just hold it and he would try to make something happen with his feet. And Auburn fans would get very, very frustrated. So where do you stand on Bo Nix? Do you think that he improves this Oregon team?
I think it's one of the more interesting questions in the sport this season. And I don't know, because you're spot on about what we saw from Bo Nix at Auburn. What I think is fascinating, though, is a couple things. First of all, Oregon has a very, very good offensive line, one of the best O lines in the entire country. So he'll get plenty of protection. Secondly, you have Dan Lanning, the former Georgia defensive coordinator, taking over. And by the way, Oregon opens against Georgia on September 3rd. That should be something. But Lanning is a guy who has scouted against Bo Nix in the SEC. He's game planned against Bo Nix. So I wonder, as a guy who has game planned for Bo Nix, if he can say, okay, we know how to stop you. We figured out ways to do that. We've done this in the SEC. Now, because I know what your weaknesses are, maybe we can play to your strengths. Even though this is a defensive guy, certainly as a staff, they can say, let's play to Bo's strengths here because we know what he doesn't do well behind an offensive line that's very good. It could honestly go either way. I'm not big on Oregon because I think there's too many question marks there, particularly with Nix, even though their linebacking core is going to be unbelievable. There's a lot to like about Oregon, but as far as betting them, I'd probably stay away.
I think so too. An interesting note, Oregon does open the season against Georgia on September 3rd, which will be circled on the calendar for me. I love those big cross divisional or conference matchups that kind of showcase the strength of college football. But another point is looking at those three teams that have the best odds to win the Pac-12, only one of them has a tenured head coach. Both Oregon and USC are welcoming in new head coaches, where usually it takes a minute for new head coaches to install their system, for college kids age 18 to 22 to learn a new system. So I think we will see a bit of a tougher start for those type of teams compared to Utah, who Kyle Whittingham has been there since 2001. I believe he's been the head coach since 2005, but still, there is no new things to learn for that Utah team. So I think there's another reason why you look at Utah here, just because I think it's the more stable pick.
I agree with that. One other pick I also like is, I'm going to go, well, not really off the board here, but UCLA is a team I'm not crazy about, but I like them to go over 8.5 wins for a couple reasons. Number one, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is back for like the 63rd season. He's been there forever. It's like his 5th year at UCLA. But when you look at their schedule, Chelsea, UCLA's non-conference schedule, it is straight garbage. They play Bowling Green, Alabama State, and South Alabama, and they get a top-heavy Pac-12 schedule. This is a team that won 8 games last year. I think they can improve on that. And you get over 8.5 at minus 115. I really do like that Bruins bet.
Yeah, I think you look at the schedules for all of these teams, if you are looking at their win totals, that's one thing that does go in favor of USC. I don't think they play Oregon or Utah, if I'm not mistaken. I know they don't play Oregon, so they have a softer schedule as well.